Greetings. Just a little video today about the state of our education, our mind. I have emphasized so much before our media environment, the nature of the platforms that we're on, how they're controlled, the mind control that happens to people who are immersed in modern media platforms. Of course, we all know that cable TV was captured long ago, turned into a super partisan, captured media type platform that was not trustworthy. The internet came along and it was exciting at first. There were comment threads underneath articles that you could comment on. You could learn from other people's comments. There's a lot going on there. Well, they've shut down that comment section, taken control of the internet. We now know that with money through USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy, that there was a very active government campaign to control what people thought about COVID and what they think about the Ukraine war and stuff like that, what they think about Donald Trump and all this other kind of stuff. It's all highly manipulated, highly controlled, with lots of money being spent, and definitely the government definitely controlling. They deleted thousands and thousands of tweets from Twitter at the behest of the government, working through this shared cloud server thing we all know about now. I think it's became the Virulent Project or something like that, but it was something else before, with money, like once again from the National Endowment for the Democracy and stuff like that. This is all well documented now. It's all come out, and of course Matt Taibbi did that great story about the Twitter files, and a lot of stuff came out on Mike Schellenberger. They revealed a lot, so that's great. Hasn't helped us though. The platform still totally sucks. X was purchased by Elon Musk. Those big promise of transparency, going to get rid away, but no, he handed it over to Lindy Yaccarino, and it's been just crap. But part of it's not just the platforms. Part of it is it's a deeper problem now. It's a deeper problem. It's education. People's minds are conditioned from childhood, and I don't know. I've kind of discovered some nice quotes. Modern education doesn't make you smarter; it makes you easier to control. Intelligence does not equate to being resistant to mind control. John Gatto is one person who writes a lot about this. John Gatto. Another is Ivan Illich. Ivan Illich has this book called Deschooling Society. When people are taught, they lose their inherent ability to learn. When people are like bully taught to conform, the kids are naturally curious. People inherently have an ability to learn. They want to learn. So what education should do is give them tools, methods for learning, not make them repeat rote stuff. But the idea of the modern education actually lowers people's ability to think critically, makes them more compliant, more easier to manipulate. Smart fools, right? This is an abundance of smart fools. People who can do required problems, do advanced math problems, but they can't seem to be aware of what's going on around them. They have no awareness of larger trends. They can't analyze things for themselves. And the more educated they are, sort of the more predictable, more programmable they are. So education is supposed to create free thinkers, not conformity. When you think about it, conformity has been the thing. Getting into the right narrative, repeating the right talking points for the day, being in your group, your tribe, your cohort. You're being fed certain information based on the cohort you're in, and you're expected to repeat the same things based on the cohort you're in. So you don't know anything about Raytheon or defense contractors or the CIA or anything like that, but you're very triggered about Donald Trump because you're in that cohort focused on Donald Trump and going around saying things like "No kings," which was a phrase and an organized protest, quote unquote, faux protest movement organized by Arabella advisors associated with the CIA and these things I've been mentioning. Right, so it's faux resistance, and you can only get this kind of thing happening on a mass scale that we're seeing it on now if education has been degraded to the point that it has been. So there's no critical thinking, no one being asking, who is this in the past we used to protest the Vietnam War because we wanted to end the Vietnam War, right? We weren't tricked into supporting the Vietnam War and hating some American personality. What if all the resistance to the Vietnam War had been instead turned into just pure hatred for Barry Goldwater or something like that, and everybody was just still focused on Barry Goldwater, and they never wanted to end the Vietnam War? In other words, they had no agenda, much like the people at No Kings have no agenda. There's a genocide going on in Gaza, and they're focused on hating this vague, the current controlled opposition puppet figure, Donald Trump. And so anyway, I just wanted to focus on some of this education stuff. The book by Ivan Illich, Deschooling Society. That seems interesting. I'd like to look at that. And if you have any notes about education, what's happened to education, or someone who's having success, I need to start focusing on who's fighting this, who's winning in the modern context, in the modern state of the mass hypnosis that we're in now, the program society, the post-education, post-media environment that we're in now, the post-critical consciousness. We're now in a programmed society. Now that we're in this society, who's having success at breaking the spell? Who's having success at promoting critical consciousness, critical thinking? I'd like to learn about some of these methods, some of these things that people are having success. Nolan Higdon is in the battle. Mickey Huff, they're super in the battle, and they're doing it. They're doing the right stuff. They're saying the right things. You have journalists like Abby Martin. They're really trying to put the focus on what's really happening in Palestine. They're really trying to do real journalism. But they're so marginalized. We don't hear from them. NPR doesn't want to have a nice, beautiful interview with Abby Martin, right? That'd be too honest. That'd be too cool. So she's not on NPR. Not there. And now it's really at a weird level now. Even on the right, you have this weird little faction, like hyper-focused truth tellers are just trying to punch through now. You got Candace Owens, and she's just really doing battle with this fake narrative around the death of Charlie Kirk. Who murdered Charlie Kirk? What's happening with all that? There's this total constructed fake narrative, and also a real big movement to just move on, don't talk about it, just let's forget it. What is Turning Point USA? What's happening there? Is it in fact controlled by Israel or being super handled by Israel? Anyway, but Candace is now she's like this thing, she's another trigger point now. She's she can be called a far right or something like that, and you can just dismiss her and everything she says that way. And so there's no just attempt to just have any real scrutiny for what she says, to even hear what she says. Most people will never actually hear what she says. They're going to hear little snippets, little tidbits that have been chosen for them, and it's going to be put in a frame for them. So they're not going to experience raw takes of Candace Owens. They're going to experience her through the filter, a controlled filter. And that's the way much of our media goes now. So, I'm looking for people out there that are working on this and doing good things about it. I know they're out there. I know there are there. I just don't. I work too much. I work long hours. I don't have much time to do research and stuff. So I know there's things getting by me. So when I say, "Oh, this isn't happening" or that isn't, maybe I'm just too sad. I need to get out there and look better, right? So if you know about things, tell me, please. Nolan Higdon, Mickey Huff. Project Censored, I think, is still going. There's these things happening. What are they doing? How are they combating this? Because so far we're losing it, right? Most people walking around are totally duped out of their minds most of the time. They could be duped out of their mind. They could be triggered. It could be about a vaccine, or it could be about a lot of things that they can be triggered by. And so that seems to be the thing now, just to keep people kind of in an emotionally reactive, triggered space where they're never getting grounded, never getting calm, never breathing. See, let me take a big picture overview of this, a kind of a long history, a long view of what's happening, and gain some perspective about it that way. They're never really getting to that point. Instead, they're kind of just confirmation bias. They're kind of just seeking stuff that just kind of confirms their already held biases, and confirms, hardens up the tribe that they're in, their narrative, their thing. Lots of people are coming at me now on Twitter like, hey, Jeff, aren't you seeing it now that I was right about Trump all along when I was just telling you all this crazy stuff about Trump and how bad he is? Now you need to focus on Trump, 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 Trump. Aren't you focused on him now? Aren't you focused on him yet, Jeff? Aren't you really freaked out about Trump yet? Don't you see he's making huge mistakes? I can say I'm saying he's making huge mistakes. I never liked him. I was never saying let's focus exclusively on him. I'm saying let's look at some other trends. Let's look at the long arc of power and maybe how he fits into that as controlled opposition. No one was willing to see that. No one was willing to do that with me. And they were instead just saying, oh, maybe you're dangerous. Your speech needs to be controlled. If you want people to think that they can do things for themselves after they get to virus, they could maybe help heal themselves, be empowered, have some agency. That's wrong thinking. That's wrong think, Jeff. We don't like that. You need to submit to Dr. Fauci just completely and wholly into our controlled narrative that we have now. You need to be super freaked out and triggered about Trump all the time, and to never mention Arabella advisors or any other, the Atlantic Council, the sort of CIA revolving door, the Atlantic Council, how these intelligence agencies, England, Britain, British intelligence, the Mossad, Israeli intelligence, the CIA, these kind of entities, we don't ever want to talk about them or see them. And so we'll just never really, we're just going to let's just keep talking to the puppets that they put before us to dance with. They want us to dance with certain marionettes. Let's stay focused on those marionettes. Let's keep focusing on those marionettes, Jeff. And in fact, if you don't stay focused on Trump, there's something wrong. You're wrong, right? Most of my leftist friends in the Bay Area now I'm completely alienated from. When I tune back into their thread or what they're talking about, it's still Trump. And when Donald Trump did this, and it's Mitch, I forget that name. He's a British guy on KPFA in the mornings, and he's just hyper. He hates Trump, right? He has on these academic. And today I've got on Professor so and so who's going to talk about this aspect of how much Trump sucks, and so we're going to spend another hour on Trump sucks for an hour. And what they bring up, some of it's true, some of it's not. It's okay, it's fine, but it's never a bigger perspective of who's really in control, what's really going on. How are we just now accepting that this genocide is happening in Palestine, and it's just kind of going on. It's just kind of in the background, I think I'm just going to get my latte. I'm not really going to notice that. In fact, if I talk about that, maybe I'm anti-Semitic. I don't know, I'm feeling weird. The media is manipulating me. I shouldn't think about the genocide that's going on right now. I don't know. I shouldn't have my own questions about, mRNA, lipid nanoparticle vaccines. That's crazy talk, right? That's all just crazy talk. And I'm not concerned. I don't care, So that's where people are. They've been really duped out of their minds. They're really triggered. And it is the media, the legacy media environment that's been completely captured since the 1996 deregulation of our media environment. Our media has been completely captured. Also, the social media environment now has just been eaten up. We know that there's these FBI-directed DHS. I'm forgetting to mention the Department of Homeland Security. It's mainly the Department of Homeland Security now is manipulating our social media. We know all this is going on. And no one seems to. What am I doing? My own research? Am I crazy? What's wrong, Jeff? Why the focus on that? Let's just go back to focusing on Trump and just repeating the same things everybody else is talking about on NPR, right? And that's so troubling. So I think, again, look into some of these books about education for critical consciousness, humanities, critical consciousness. These are things I want to stress. It has value when you read Shakespeare. You talk about how societies are manipulated in a kind of literary way, taking a step back, looking at this, having a good time. Boy, look what happened to those Romans, look what happened. Oh my gosh, So, literature, humanities, critical thinking, logic, argument, these kinds of things. We need to get this back into education, into the curriculum. And then we also need a media critique, but the media critique that's being funded now is all about how to combat misinformation, which is basically people saying things online that do not benefit the establishment. People raising questions about vaccines, or people raising questions about war policy, giving tons of money just continually to Israel or something like that. So you're the thing. That's a problem. That indicates that you're not thinking according to them, that you've gone down a rabbit hole or something like that. And that's just because we've just lost. So we need to promote better education. We also need to get away from this focus on identity politics. Once again, everyone needs to have rights. We need to establish those rights. That's already over. Gay rights, that's all awesome. We love that. The right to marry whoever you want. I don't care. Do what you do in your own time. That's you, right? What you do with my tax dollars, now that's something else. So you get away from all that trivial, identity, superficial stuff. What's happening in bathrooms, gender issues in bathrooms and stuff like that. The elitists must be laughing at us. Now we got some black lesbian who's super pissed off about a dude in the bathroom. And that's all smeared with all this beautiful, language. It's politically correct to use the right pronouns and all that, And so that people are focused on that. And they're not focused on what's really happening. And a lot of people in America are also super Zionist at this point. They're just, been educated into always going along with Israel, no matter what, having no scrutiny for anything. And that's sad. So we got to do better. Got to read some of these things, look at stuff, and do better. Ask good questions, and have our own scrutiny for things.